When they exited the country, they left a lot of oil contamination throughout the region. And so 30,000 indigenous communities basically filed the largest class action lawsuit against a multinational corporation. They won that lawsuit after 2 decades fighting this company, and basically was one of the largest decisions against a multinational corporation in the world on behalf of indigenous people.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the RAN Wrap-Up, Rainforest Action Network's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly in news from around the world affecting the climate and all those that depend on it. As always, we're taking a look this week at the issues that will ultimately affect all of us, what we can do about it, and what we are doing about it at Rainforest Action Network. Before we jump in, you might be wondering, what in the hell is the RAN Wrap-Up? Great question. Well, we thought it would be a good way to introduce you to some of our activists, our campaigners, our organizers, our leaders here in the organization, what they're working on, why it's important, and hopefully how you can help make a difference. Plus, let's be honest, sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming trying to keep up with the news and the alerts and the actions and the asks day in and day out, week after week. So here is an easy and hopefully new way to digest some of those important pieces. So a new episode will come out bi-weekly. Or is it bi-monthly? I don't know. A new episode will come out every 2 weeks. And it will have some updates, some actions, and a short interview. So if you like what you're seeing, please hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notification so YouTube can then remind you when a new video comes out from us, and I'll be happy. So let's dive into this thing. So we at Rainforest Action Network have been trying to stop deforestation in Indonesia for many years now by targeting the bad actors in the palm oil industry. And we do that by pressuring the companies that source their conflict palm oil from plantations that threaten both our forests and our climate in order to get them to change their practices. We've been setting our sights on Procter Gamble, an Ohio-based company that you most definitely have heard of, even if you think that you haven't. They make Dawn, Downy, Gain, Olay, Pantene, Head & Shoulders, Charmin, Bounty. So how is Procter & Gamble responsible? Well, they have ties with conflict palm oil suppliers like Royal Golden Eagle, who have been involved in some really devastating deforestation practices. We've been keeping the pressure on Procter & Gamble, and so can you. First off, go sign our petition. The link's down below. No, seriously, you can do it now. You click it, it's gonna pop up. You can watch this and sign at the same time. Second, join our Twitter storm or X storm. I don't know. I'm going with Twitter storm for now. Anyways, join our Twitter storm on August 14th, where we maximize our impact by sending a bunch of messages all at the same time so that we can't be ignored. So if you want to join in on that, follow the other link down below. Open that up. It's going to give you a window, some text you can fill out, how to schedule it, so forth and so on. So our collective voices will be heard. Okay, how can we not kick off episode 1 by interviewing our executive director, Ginger Cassidy. Ginger is an amazing activist. I've had the privilege of working with her for over a decade now. She's doing some amazing work, and we are lucky to have her here at the helm of Rainforest Action Network. And I'm lucky she spared a few minutes to talk about how RAN started, its mission, and how we kinda, sorta owe a lot of that to the Grateful Dead. We're here with Ginger Cassidy, our executive director. First question is who you are and what do you do at RAN, but I've already said it, but maybe you can answer it for yourself. Who are you and what do you do at RAN?
Thanks, Jake. I'm Ginger Cassidy, and I'm currently the executive director at Rainforest Action Network, and I've been in this role for a little over 3 years now.
I think people probably have the impression that an executive director sits in their big office and goes to a lot of meetings and that's about it, which might be true, but you're also a campaigner, you're a strategist. You are going to meetings, but you're also going to protests. I've seen you get arrested a bunch of times. What does it mean to be an executive director of an organization like Rainforest Action Network? Is it different than any other positions that you've held in the past?
Absolutely. You get to wear lots of hats in this role, and you get to do everything from being on the front lines and participating in really exciting actions to being in corporate negotiations with some of the biggest corporations that we're challenging. So overall, I get to kind of have my hand in a little bit of everything at the organization, which makes the role constantly changing and evolving. But I get to use kind of all my different lived experiences in this position.
Cool. Do you have any favorites?
Oh man, I mean, I think for me, the thing that I love the most is just connecting with our supporters, our donors, and our activists, people that are involved in the campaigns, and being a part of this kind of team and organization with all these amazing, the whole staff of the organization are just doing such great work. So I feel like, I really love the role, and I love being a part of helping strategize, design, and then kind of execute our campaigns. So it's hard to kind of pick out a favorite thing, but I would say being out and mobilizing moments are some of my favorite parts of the job.
So this is episode 1 of our little show here on YouTube. So I think a lot of people are just kind of getting to know Rainforest Action Network. Can you talk a little bit about how RAN got its start? Like what are its roots?
Yeah, so RAN has been around for a little over 35 years, and the organization started at a time where deforestation rates in the mid 80s were basically skyrocketing in places like the Amazon rainforest, which is the largest rainforest in the world. And so the organization came together really out of a group of folks who came together to talk about how do we actually protect rainforests in a way that's going to amplify the communities and Indigenous voices on the front lines who are bearing the biggest impact of deforestation, and how are we going to challenge the banks and the corporations who are responsible for that deforestation. So the organization actually convened a big conference where they brought together a lot of frontline voices to talk about, what could groups like, organizations in the North do to challenge a lot of the corporate power that's exploiting resources in places like the Amazon. So that's pretty much how the organization started working on a market campaign targeting actually Burger King, who was going in and sourcing meat from the Amazon and bringing it up to the US marketplace. And so the organization formed out of a campaign going after Burger King and challenging other corporate policies and strategies.
But it also kind of has its roots a little bit in music, right? How did RAN kind of dip its toe into that arena?
Yeah, well, a big component of the work was to also educate people about what's going on in rainforest regions, that this destruction was taking place, and how to make rainforests a kind of a more known term in a lot of people's lives. And so marketing was a big component of the work, and being able to tell the story about what is going on in these regions that are kind of far away from us here in the United States. So one of the biggest things that RAN did at the time when they started was reach out to a lot of musicians and celebrities like the Grateful Dead, who are a very well-known band. And in a couple years into the formation of the organization, the Grateful Dead had one of their big concerts at the Madison Square Garden in New York, and contributed their proceeds from the ticket sales to Rainforest Action Network. And so that's how RAN started getting into more pop culture and getting musicians to educate people about what's going on in rainforests, why people should care, and then how they can contribute their money into protecting these areas. And that's really a big part of how the organization was started and founded and funded, which is a critical part of the work as well.
Was there a point in time in the RAN timeline where it moved and kind of expanded its campaign scope outside of the Amazon and maybe even outside of forests?
Yeah, so at the time when they were looking at kind of, what markets do we need to focus on to really shift kind of corporate policy, the organization not only looked at big brands that were driving deforestation, but they also looked at who are the biggest financiers driving deforestation, and at the same time, fossil fuel expansion, which was another thing that was impacting communities in the Amazons. And the late 80s, early 90s, RAN started working on global finance campaigning, looking at what are the key drivers of tropical deforestation. One was deforestation and fossil fuel expansion. And how do we look at who's behind that? And so that's when our global finance campaign work started. And that work kind of involved into looking at a more global lens, not only in tropical forest regions, but also looking at what's happening in North America, what type of fossil fuel expansion is happening in the United States, up in Canada. And that's when RAN started looking at not just forests, but also at the climate impacts and who are the main contributors to that.
We'll talk a little bit about this later with campaigners in future episodes, but could you just give us like a general overview of like, what does it mean to do a pressure campaign with focusing on like secondary and tertiary targeting? Because I think it's a little bit of a wonky idea for people to think like, oh, if I protest this, it's going to affect something else or someone else in another part of the world. Can you kind of give us a general overview of what that means?
I think one of the things that's really unique about our organization, and that's been a big part of our history, is that we really do a lot of deep research, and we really take a sector approach where we look at, okay, what is the impact happening in a region, in a place that we are working with partners in that region to protect? What are the main, financiers that are behind that? Also, what are the main big brands or big companies that are behind that destruction as well? And we do a lot of research, and then we'll kind of expose all these kind of players who are contributing to this destruction. And from that, then we'll tease out within a sector, either the financial sector or within the logging sector, within other big commodities like palm oil, beef, and soy, who are the biggest traders in those sectors. And then Rand will hone in on, okay, who's one of the most influential, maybe customers of those companies that we can put pressure on. And that's how campaigns like going after Disney to PepsiCo, which is one of the largest consumers of palm oil for their snack food products, will then look at a brand and then try to inform and educate people about how that brand is connected to these regions, to the impact on the ground. And then that's where and how Rand launches our corporate campaigns.
The strategy is something I really like about Rand. It's smart and it gets the job done. The other thing I really like about Rand is its mission statement. I feel like it's a little bit different than most. And let me just read it out for people that might not know it. I'll put it up on the screen as well. But it's Rainforest Action Network preserves forests, protects the climate, and upholds human rights by challenging corporate power and systemic injustice through frontline partnerships and strategic campaigns. And the reason I love it is because it really addresses that intersection of forest, climate, and human rights. Can you tell us like why those three elements are important to adjust future and why they are interlinked?
Absolutely. I think the thing that's unique about Rand and why we find those elements of our mission so critical is that in order to stabilize the climate, we have to be working with communities on the front lines that are being the most impacted and have the most important solutions to basically stop deforestation and also stabilize the climate. And so Rand is not just an environmental organization, we're also a human rights organization. And you can't have one without the other in order to achieve what we need to achieve currently during this climate crisis. So working at that intersection is a really core part of our mission and who Rand is. And it really is the only viable solution if we are going to, create a much more stable climate, at the same time uphold the rights of people on the front lines who are actually being the most impacted by currently what's taking place in the world.
Can you give us an example of either a current or a past campaign that has really touched on those three pieces in a successful way?
Absolutely. One of the big campaigns that we've worked on with partners in the Amazon was taking on Chevron, one of the largest oil companies in the world that went into the Ecuadorian Amazon and did a lot of oil exploration for decades without free, prior, informed consent from communities on the ground. When they exited the country, they left a lot of oil contamination throughout the region. And so 30,000 Indigenous communities basically filed the largest class action lawsuit against a multinational corporation for the destruction that they caused in their communities, and also the lack of cleanup and restoration that needed to take place. They won that lawsuit after 2 decades fighting this company. And basically was one of the largest decisions against a multinational corporation in the world on behalf of Indigenous people. So that's an example of a campaign where it took a really long time. It took a lot of commitment, but there was a final decision against the corporation. Unfortunately, though, on the other hand of that is that the corporation Chevron has still not paid the $20 billion settlement that was fined against them. And so the fight still continues.
Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us. I appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to bug you in the future for more chats. I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions for you. And thanks so much.
Great. Thanks, Jake.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed talking with Ginger as much as I did. If you'd like to get more involved in taking action or getting more information, head on over to our webpage at ran.org. That's RAN.org, where you can join us in using people power to challenge business as usual. And why would you want to do that? Because we win.